Hello, everybody. Hello, YouTube. Hello, art history enthusiasts and visual culture aficionados. It's me again, Miss M, and I'm back with yet another video. Today, what are we gonna do today? Well, today I'm going to continue with on my recent tech with regard to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Thank you, first of all, for all the comments on the last video. I appreciate them a great deal. I got 200 views. That might not be a lot for another channel. For me, it's plenty. I'm very glad that you watched it. All of you who watched it a total of 200 times. That means a great deal to me, and I appreciate it a lot. That being said, I've got more to do. I've got more work to do. I think I've been, I've had a little more kind of like time to breathe and think and what have you lately. I'm still like, my schedule is still tight, but again, the 2001: A Space Odyssey was the push that made me move, as a Slipknot would say. There's a lot going on, and I've been thinking about a lot of stuff and looking at a lot of stuff. I even think I think I have solved the mystery of the monolith. Okay, actually, like 3 of them. There's 3 of them in the movie, and I think I have figured it out. That's not today's video. That's another video. We gonna talk about it. Okay. Today, what we're gonna talk about is what I said I would talk about last time when I finished up this 2001, the first one, the video. I said I'm gonna talk about. Did I say it in the video? I think I must have, but I also had like a little conversation with Gershom too since then. So maybe I said it to him and I thought I said it to everybody. No. I am confused, but never mind. I'm gonna, in this video, show you, what I think, some of Stanley's, inspirations are or were for 2001: A Space Odyssey, and all of them are the Twilight Zone. I'm going to show you the episodes of the Twilight Zone that I believe Stanley Kubrick was inspired by when he got together, from what the story says on Wikipedia. He got together with Arthur C. Clarke to do the script for 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I mean, when you really think about it, like, if you've seen 2001, you know, it's obvious. It's not difficult to see or realize. 2001 is not a very dialogue heavy movie. So that script must have been short. Yeah. I've never seen it. I've never seen the script like, written out like The Shining script. There's a lot more dialogue in The Shining, for example, than there is in 2001. 2001, there's a lot of silence. There's a whole lot of silence. And there's a reason for that. I mean, there's probably a reason for that. Stanley really wants you to pay attention to the pictures. He doesn't, yeah, the dialogue is important. We'll get into it eventually. But Stanley was an artist. Okay? Stanley Kubrick was an artist, and he was a visual artist. And no, he didn't use canvas and paint brushes and paint and solvents and what, artists or painters usually use to create a picture. No, he used film. He used film and his master photographer's eye and his composition and all of that. That's what he used. Okay. And he painted this amazing picture. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the influences that I believe that Stanley drew from the Twilight Zone, specifically or especially the first season of the Twilight Zone. There were 5 of them, and I think the first episode aired. Hold on, here it is. Right? No, that's not it. Sorry. Here it is. Where is everybody? It was the first episode of the Twilight Zone, or the pilot episode. It was a pilot. Original air date October 2nd, 1959, and the last episode that was aired of the original series was 1964, in June 1964. And I don't know whether or not Stanley had moved to England by then, but it doesn't matter. Let me show you one more thing. I just did a community post and to announce this video that you're watching now. New 2001 Space Odyssey video coming up. Stay tuned. And in the meantime, yeah, go ahead and listen to Megadeth, Hangar 18. It's very Twilight Zone-esque, that song. So, enjoy if you like thrash metal. Go ahead and enjoy it. So, before I get into anything, people, I want you to know we're going to do some church announcements. I want you to know it's time. It is time for you to fire up the percolator and get your coffee together. However you do it, however you like coffee. Or if you don't like coffee at all, you can have whatever you like. You could have a soda, you could have a beer, you could have a glass of wine. That ain't none of my business. Just, go get something, go get comfortable, find your little spot where you like to sit, get some nice donuts, cinnamon roll, whatever you like to have. And find a nice comfortable spot to sit in the house, on the porch. It's your choice. And relax and hopefully enjoy what I'm about to throw at you. Because I've got a lot. I've got hold on. This is the wiki page for this movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6. 7, 8, I think. And 9 episodes of the Twilight Zone that I want to talk about, plus some ancillary stuff. Okay? Yeah, there it is. You see it. But that's there just for reference, okay? Because I needed a date. So yeah, I'm going to go through all those. Probably going to be reading a lot, so I hope, if you needed a bedtime story, this is it. So get your coffee stuff together, get comfortable. It is time. Fire up the percolator, get your cocktails, get your gin and tonics and Long Island iced tea, whatever you're into. It's none of my business. And get comfortable. All right. And I'm not going to go over the comments from my first 2001 video in the future. I will. Okay. Once, I have a little more free time, a little more time to quote unquote chat. But I also want to let you know, I want to say, returning viewers, thank you for returning. New viewers, thank you for being new. Subscribers, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it so very, very much. Every single last one of you. You didn't have to hit that subscribe button. You didn't have to be here, period. But you are, and it means a great deal to me. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you know anybody who might be interested in my particular brand of nonsense. And that's that. So we're done. Church announcements are finito. And when I say church announcements, good viewers and good listeners, I use that terminology for a reason, or that terminology, that phraseology for a reason. I say church announcements because, If you know, you know. I mean, if you've been able to figure it out, that's wonderful. If you haven't been able to figure it out, you will. You will. Just stick around, watch every single last one of my videos. Look how many of them there are. And I've got 226, alright? And most of them are quite long. So if you've got, stuff that you need to get done, if you've got to clean the house, you've got to do the laundry, and in the bathroom, like the Beastie Boys said, if you got to mow the lawn, clean out the garage, this is perfect. You could take a journey into the recesses of your own mind by watching and listening to my videos. Yes, you can. So I've got everything together. I've got all my tabs lined up. And we're going to talk about the Flying Dutchman too, because that's connected to one of the Twilight Zone episodes that I'm going to talk about. Most of these episodes, by the way, are in season 1. And season 1, I did my research. I went through the Wikipedia pages for just about every episode of this television series, the Twilight Zone. And yeah, they do deal with space travel and science fiction, that kind of stuff. But the most space travel themed heavy season of the entire series, all 5 seasons, is season 1. There's a couple of them, in season. So for example, this one, where is everybody? Season 1. And when the sky was open, season 1. That's it. Yeah. And Third from the Sun, season 1. I shot an arrow into the air, season 1. Elegy, season 1. And we're really going to concentrate on this one, I think. Yeah. This one is especially important, but they're all important. People are alike all over. Season 1. The Shelter, that's season 3. And it doesn't have to do with space travel. It has to do with the atomic bomb. All right? Stay with me now. That's season 3. And then Death Ship, that's season 4. And I will read the plots from all of these. Like I said, if you need a bedtime story, this is it. And the Odyssey. The Odyssey, eh? The Odyssey. As in the Space Odyssey, yeah. The Odyssey of Flight 33. That's season 2. All right. And original air date 1961. And that is connected to the Flying Dutchman. Now, the reason why I put up the tab of Apollo 11, I'll explain that, and then I'll go on my own little coffee break, and then I'll, get back to you after you've got your coffee stuff together and whatever. Why did I put up the wiki page for Apollo 18? Because I needed to know the date of the of the thing. When did it happen? When did it happen? It was right here in this sidebar. Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. Oh, yes. Landing date. July 24th. Oh, no. That's the recovery mission. The start of the mission. Launch date. Okay. July 16th, 1969. The Saturn V rocket launch site, Kennedy Space Center. All right. Well, looky. Call sign, CSM Columbia. LM, I don't know what LM stands for, but Eagle. Okay, I don't know what LM is. I'm gonna have to look it up. But remember, the Eagle has landed. Yes. And the Eagle is connected. And now this is 1969. So this is after the release of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Look at this. Space Odyssey was released. Stanley Kubrick's movie. Release date. The earliest release date is April, and the latest release date is May, all of 1968. So that's over a year before the start of the mission of Apollo 11, July 1969. I mean, everybody, I know a lot of y'all think that Stanley Kubrick directed this. I do not agree with that, but maybe I should just use that to market this video and get my ass out into the algorithm, because so many people believe that. I don't believe it. His daughter went on record, Vivian went on record, said no, that's not what's going on, that didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that the Apollo 11 mission was not on Stanley's mind, especially when he was making, everything he made after the Apollo 11 mission, like Clockwork, Barry Lyndon, The Shining, whatever. Because, 2001, one of his best movies, if some would say his very best movie. Some would say The Shining, it doesn't even hold a candle to 2001: A Space Odyssey. I would disagree. I think they're both equally pretty darn good movies. It is hard now. I mean, I love me some Shining. I think Shining will always have a special place in my heart, and I'm not done working on that movie. We have much to do. We have much to discuss. But 2001, Stanley is a very abstract movie, right? If Stanley was a painter, like The Shining would be like postmodern, I don't know. If Stanley was a painter and like each of his paintings were to be kind of compared to a genre of 20th century painting, maybe 2001 would just be like postmodernism in general. And then not 2001, excuse me. The Shining would just be postmodernism in general, with its play on words and all this stuff, but visual puns and what have you. 2001 would be like Dada, surrealism, that kind of thing, in my opinion. Because there's a lot of stuff that he simply doesn't explain in the movie. There's a lot more explanation, in my opinion, going on by Stanley in The Shining than there is in the Space Odyssey movie. That's how I feel. And now, again, Space Odyssey was released in 68. Apollo mission, the first trip to the moon, by the way. The first trip to the moon happened in 1969. 69 was a big year. Okay. Look at what it says here. Ooh, look at. Apollo 11 effectively proved U.S. victory in the space race. And that is shown to us in 2001. Like that meeting with what's his face? Where's the cast? Dr. Frank Poole. Okay, no, not no, Haywood Floyd. Dr. Haywood Floyd, when he was meeting with those Russians, like, that was a tense-ass meeting, right? And the Russians were like, he's not telling, there's something he's not telling us. I didn't even need a translation. Like, you could tell. That's what they were saying. Apollo 11 effectively proved U.S. victory in the space race to demonstrate spaceflight superiority by fulfilling a national goal proposed in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy. And the quote is, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. That's the goal. Before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. Well, they did 3. Okay? 3 men. Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr. on the Eagle. Okay. And Stanley... Oh my God. Like, just reading that quote by JFK and everything it's got my wheels spinning again. And it's making me think of so many things. Like, what is going on? What is Stanley telling us? And I think me going over these Twilight Zone episodes will give us a good amount of insight into what Stanley was trying to tell us. Did he know? I'm in my mind, in my opinion, I'm 100% for sure that Stanley was influenced and inspired by the Twilight Zone, especially that first season. But like these episodes, I've handpicked the episodes that I think he was inspired by especially. I could be wrong. If you think there's one I missed, put it in the comments. Please help me, educate me, inform me. But I think that's what's going on. And he was inspired by this because like this show, this American TV show by, I guess, written by Rod Serling, or like the Twilight Zone was Rod Serling's baby. Rod Serling, they concentrated on a lot about space travel and what that says about the human condition, the human mind, the way we live as human beings on this planet. And Twilight Zone dealt a great deal with ethics and morality. And it dealt with it not in a preachy way. Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone people who put these shows together, they didn't preach at you. No. They just, they put it down. They wrote amazing stories and beautifully acted by amazing actors. By this guy here, one of them, Earl Holliman, wonderful actor. Okay, wonderful production values, especially for the time. Okay, and they did not try to convince you of anything. They put forth what they had to say, and they let you do the rest of the work for yourself. It was your responsibility as a viewer of this show to do the thinking. And I truly believe that Stanley, kind of ran with that himself. So, that's my little intro to this. I'm gonna try and whip through these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to talk about the Flying Dutchman, yes. Especially because, why do I think it's especially important to talk about the Flying Dutchman? Because of the avocado in The Shining, okay? Avocado is a Dutch drink, Delta, if you're listening, if you could hear me. Like, avocado is a very, 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 very much of the Netherlands, very much a Dutch or Holland kind of beverage. Okay, so why did Stanley put that in there? Why? did Stanley put Avocat in the gold room with that exchange between him and Grady in the gold room in the show? Because the Dutch and the Dutch East India Company or whatever, and what it says here, Dutch Maritime Power, okay, they were serious back then. They were the adventurers and the explorers of their day. Those people in Holland. All right, they went all over the place with their ships and their mariners and all of that. They were the 17th century equivalent of astronauts at that time in history. So that's how I feel, and that's what I believe. Again, Mr. Delta, let me know if you have anything to contribute to what I just said, or if I said something stupid, correct me, please do. I'm going to go have my own little coffee break. I'm going to come back, and we're going to get started with this first one. Where is everybody? The pilot episode of the Twilight Zone. And that's that. If you need this moment to go get yourself a coffee or go fill up your cup again, that would be a good idea. So I'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. Hold on. Okay, everybody, I'm back. And I've just thought of, like, one of my commenters, one of my viewers is actually, I can't remember your screen name, and I'm so sorry. But if you're listening, like, one of you is like a pretty hardcore Twilight Zone fan. So, hey, buddy, this one's for you. This video's for you. We're going to talk a lot about the Twilight Zone here. And here's the first episode I want to cover. Okay, and I've watched or rewatched this episode recently, and this was the pilot episode. And like in the video that I have, it also has in the beginning of it, like Rod Serling, like a pretty extensive segment of Rod Serling, like pitching the show to television executives. Like there's video of him talking about how awesome the Twilight Zone is and why they need to pick it up as a show and sponsor it or whatever. Pretty interesting. So Rod Serling was working hard to get people to listen to him and take him seriously about this show at the time. So here we are. Where is everybody? I believe it's one of the Twilight Zone episodes that inspired Stanley. Now, am I saying that Stanley, like, ripped off the Twilight Zone? No, I am not saying that. I am not saying that at all. But I do believe he was very heavily inspired by the Twilight Zone, among other things. He took ideas, or he saw ideas in these shows and then combined them with some other stuff that I'll cover in future videos about this. And bada bing, bada boom, here comes 2001: A Space Odyssey. Okay, so here it is. Where is everybody? Is the first episode of the American anthology television series The Twilight Zone, and it was originally broadcast on the 2nd of October 1959 on CBS. It is one of the most realistic Twilight Zone episodes, as it features no supernatural elements and is based on a fairly straightforward extrapolation of science. Okay, and then of course there's his intro, Rod Serling's intro, and then the Twilight Zone. The place is here, the time is now, and the journey into the shadows that we are about to watch could be our journey. And of course, I can't imitate Rod Serling. Nobody can. But yeah, and this is, let's see, written by Rod Serling. Doesn't say, like, is this like Rod Serling's original work, or or is it based on a short story? Because I think a lot of them are based on short stories by other authors that are adapted into scripts for the show. But what's going on in this episode? It's this guy, Earl Holliman, playing a character named Mike Ferris, who he just wakes up, and I've covered this episode in a previous video. That's why I'm not going to go into it too much. But he just finds himself in some small town in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no people. Okay, and like it says, the plot here: a man finds himself walking alone on a dirt road with no memory of who he is or how he got there. He finds a diner and walks in to find a jukebox playing loudly, but nobody present. He lowers the volume and continues to call out. Eventually, he heads into the kitchen, where he finds a hot pot of coffee on the stove and freshly made pies. But still, no other people besides himself. He accidentally knocks over and breaks a clock, at which point the jukebox stops playing. And Gershom actually sent me some like screenshots from the episode. There's a bunch of stuff going on in there. Okay, the city is named, the town that he's named turns out to be a place called, oh dear, is it here? Is it here? It should be. If they don't put it here, like, what are they thinking? I think it's called Oakwood. And again, like I talked about in this last video over here, my first video about 2001: A Space Odyssey, the oak tree is connected very closely with Jupiter. It's his tree. It's the plant that represents Jupiter. All right. And you know, this guy, there's no people there. The town seems deserted, but this guy feels like he's being watched by something. He tries to communicate. He tries to use the phone booth. It doesn't work. He goes to the police station. He sees signs of life, like a lit cigar, the jukebox playing, the hot coffee, you know, but there's nobody there. He is all alone in this place. And the only person he sees in this town, other than the mannequins at the dummy shop, but the only like human being that he sees is himself in the mirror. All right, and he makes himself ice cream sundae. He finds a book that says that's titled "The Last Man on Earth." And, like, the book scares him. He leaves. He walks into the theater. Okay, I know. I'm going to talk about that monolith in future videos. Again, I've heard the theory that the monolith is really the movie screen. I'm sorry, I don't agree with it. All right? I think it's... one of my main reasons is because if... you know, I could be wrong. But as far as I know, a movie screen from a movie theater... It's like a projector screen. It's thin. It's not... I mean, are they 1 foot deep or thick or whatever? I don't think they are. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have found other things. I believe that I have figured that part of it out. I believe I figured out the mystery of the monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Stay tuned for my future videos. I'm going to talk about it. But, so he walks into a movie theater and he where a movie starts playing called Battle Hymn, and he realizes that, you know, he sees one of the characters in the movie on the poster outside wearing a flight suit, and he realizes that he's Air Force, and, you know, he loses his mind, from loneliness, isolation in this place, in this town where it looks like people should be living. The town looks like Mayberry from, like, the Andy Griffith Show. It's beautiful. It's idyllic, it's everything, but there's no people there. There's a bakery, there's, you know, there's a movie theater, there's a high school, there's a diner, there's a soda shop, there's like everything that a town should have, especially at that time in history in the United States, but everything but the people. Everything but the people. So all of these buildings and all of these things mean nothing if there are no people there to use them. And all of these buildings and all of these things, the way they look, all of the stuff, the cars, the buildings, the books, the movie theater, everything, it looks the way it looks because those items, objects, things are the products, are the results of like thousands of years of human evolution and history and mythology and all the stuff that human beings have been doing to allegedly improve life for themselves on this planet, make life better, easier, more beautiful, technological advancements. And, you know, now, at that point in history, like the American psyche, and I think not just the Americans, but in other parts of the world too, people all of a sudden became obsessed with space. and it was space, 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 space. And then finally, in 1969, they put a man on the moon. Actually, 3 of them. All right. And then this guy is a test pilot, and they're talking about how they're going to send him to the moon. All right. And he's an astronaut. And this whole thing, this test is he's in this little box that's supposed to simulate a flight to the moon. And he's been in the booth for over 484 hours. That's about 20 days of isolation and whatever. And you're watching this and you're wondering, like, would he make it? Not necessarily physically, but like psychologically. Would he be able to deal with 20 days alone? Because obviously he cracks under the pressure of being in this situation, and he's hallucinating. Is he asleep? Is it a version of what we see in 2001, the suspended animation of like the astronaut scientists in this movie? I don't know. And again, Mike Ferris. Again, Ferris, that reminds me of like the elements, the Latin word for iron. So this guy is supposed to be made of, symbolically, he's supposed to be an iron guy, but he's real cocky, real arrogant, and whatever. But the isolation, the loneliness, like makes him just crack up mentally. He's carried out on a stretcher from the hangar, and he looks into the sky. It says here, he looks into the sky and he tells the moon, "Don't go away up there, and we'll be up there in a little while." And again, this is 1959, so they're already talking about, they're gonna go to the moon. It's not a matter of it, in 1959, this is how they felt about it. It's not a matter of if, but when. Okay, there's a lot going on in this episode. The author of this episode, Rod Serling, I guess. Oh, original score. Oh, no, that's the music. Original score. Okay, never mind. But, what is Rod Serling trying to say here with this? Like, I guess we're sick of planet Earth, so now we need to go into space and, like, figure out what's up with the moon, and then, of course, after that, what's up with all the other planets. In 2001, Stanley's like, oh no, in the 2001 story, they already been on the moon for quite some time. All right, in the lunar outpost, the Clavius base, as it says here. And at that point in history, as is depicted in 2001, A Space Odyssey, like hanging out on the moon is old news by 2001. So, and they're there, so the Americans are the ones who seem to have control of the moon. And they've discovered, the first monolith we see in the movie is with those like prehistoric creatures. And they're influenced by the monolith in whatever way. And then the second time we see the monolith is on the moon at this Clavius base place. All right. Or, monolith buried 4 million years earlier near the lunar crater Tycho. All right. Interesting. Okay, so that's Where Is Everybody? That's how the whole series, The Twilight Zone, is kicked off by Rod Serling with this. And what's wonderful about this episode, it's one actor. It's one single solitary actor. Earl Holliman, for like 99% of the episode is just him doing an amazing job, chewing up the scenery. Yes, this guy was a really, really good actor. And then at the very end, we see, the general, the colonel, like these other space people, these other military people, like talking to him. Okay. All right, cool. Now, the next episode that I want to cover. So I believe this one, the pilot episode of The Twilight Zone, very heavily influenced Stanley, and he very heavily was like impacted by watching these episodes of The Twilight Zone. Here comes the next one. And When the Sky Was Open. I haven't done a video about this. I will read this as quickly as I possibly can. It's the 11th episode of the show. Excuse me. I might have to like pause to blow my nose because, again, allergies. Originally aired December 11, 1959. It's an adaptation of the 1953 Richard Matheson's short story Disappearing Act. Okay, opening narration, again by Rod Serling. Her name is X-20, her type, an experimental interceptor. Okay, what's an interceptor? Type of fighter aircraft designed specifically for the defensive interception role against an attacking enemy aircraft, particularly bombers and reconnaissance aircraft. Okay. Recent history. A crash landing in the Mojave Desert after a 31-hour flight 900 miles into space. Incidental data. The ship with the men who flew her disappeared from the radar screen for 24 hours. The narration continues after Forbes's introduction. But the shrouds that cover mysteries are not always made out of tarpaulin, as this man will soon find out on the other side of a hospital door. Ooh, this one is creepy. This one is like, it leaves you with so many questions. Okay. So many questions. Hold on, I need to blow my nose. 1 second. Okay, I blew my nose. Hopefully that helps. Now let me read this plot to you. You probably maybe have seen it already. USAF Lieutenant Colonel Clegg Forbes arrives at a military hospital to visit his friend and co-pilot Major William Gart. The two had recently piloted an experimental space plane, the X-20. During their voyage, the craft disappeared from radar screens for a full day before reappearing and crash landing in the desert, leaving Gart with a broken leg. Forbes is agitated and asks Gart if he remembers how many people were on the mission. Gart confirms that only he and Forbes piloted the plane, but Forbes insists that a third man, Colonel Ed Harrington, his best friend for 15 years, accompanied them. In a flashback, Harrington and Forbes are discharged from the hospital after passing their physical exams and visit a bar downtown. While there, Harrington is suddenly overcome by a feeling that he no longer belongs in the world. Disturbed, he phones his parents, who tell him they have no son named Ed and believe the person calling them is a prankster. Harrington then mysteriously vanishes from the phone booth, and no one but Forbes remembers his existence. Increasingly desperate, Forbes fruitlessly searches for any trace of his friend. Back in the present, Forbes finishes recounting the story to Gart and is dismayed by his friend's claim that he doesn't know anyone named Harrington. Oh boy. Forbes then glances at a mirror and discovers he casts no reflection, causing him to flee the room in terror. Gart tries to hobble after him, only to find that Forbes has disappeared. Calling the duty nurse to ask if she saw where Forbes went, Gart is stunned by the nurse's claim that nobody named Forbes has been in the building and that Gart was the only man who was in the hospital room. Horrified, Gart also disappears. An officer enters the building and asks the duty nurse if there are any unused rooms available to accommodate new patients. The nurse takes him to the now completely empty room which hosted the 3 astronauts, telling him that it has been unoccupied. The hangar which previously housed the X-20 is then shown, with the sheet that covered the craft lying on the ground. There is no trace of the plane, and as if it and its crew never existed. This reminds me so much of 2001 because of the whole sequence in the movie where, like, they're battling with Hal, and first, what's his face? Hold on. Frank Poole, like that astronaut that gets, I guess, sucked out into space, and he just floats out into space, and then Dave has to go and rescue him, and not really even rescue him, like, he's dead. He's been exposed to whatever is out there in space, and, like, it ruins him, and he's just a dead body in a spacesuit floating around, and Dave goes out to rescue him, and while Dave is out rescuing him, Hal takes advantage of being, like, unsupervised, and kills all the other scientists in the ship who are in suspended animation. He just turns off their life support. Okay? So, whatever is going on in 2001 on that, on the spacecraft Discovery 1, which is bound for Jupiter. Like, Hal is the boss of that ship. It's not David Bowman. It's not, what's his face, Frank Poole. It's not any of the other astronauts or scientists that are on the ship. It's Hal. Hal is in charge. And Hal, starts being vicious and murderous. And he just destroys these people. And we, the audience, just like in this episode of the Twilight Zone, and then the sky was open, and we, the audience, are kind of left to wonder why. Like, why would Hal do that? Why? Because, like, the counterpart to Hal on planet Earth, that is, I guess, in sync with the Hal on the ship, the Discovery ship, in 2001, A Space Odyssey, the Earth counterpart of Hal is doing great. It's not acting crazy at all. But out in space, oh no, Hal is acting crazy for some reason. He starts just messing with the astronauts, Dave and Frank. Like, why? Why? Why does he start? That's not explained in the movie. I don't think so. Maybe I need to watch it again. But I don't think that Stanley, or in the movie, they don't give us any, like, inkling as to why Hal is acting crazy and vicious and murderous. And this one too, and the sky was open. Like, these three astronauts just disappear one after the other, and or astronauts, or, whatever they are. Yeah, I guess so. It's a space plane, the X-20 in this episode. And the astronauts disappear one by one, and then their ship that they were in, that disappears too. Okay. And it's not explained why. Like, what, did they see something they weren't supposed to see? Did something happen on this flight that wasn't supposed to happen? And, like, the powers that be are, like, and we're wondering who it is that's making these guys disappear. Is it, like, the top brass of the military? Or is it something else? Like, because the military and that nurse woman, like, nobody seems to understand. Not only do they not understand what's going on, like, they just, like, their memories of these three guys and their plane and the whole thing are just erased. Like, the Mandela effect, but, like, much, much worse. Like, Mandela effect, it's like, oh no, it used to be Berenstein, now it's Berenstain. Oh no, this is like, no, this would be like if they just erased the Berenstein Bears from our memory entirely, and you could never find one of those books again ever in a library or a bookstore or anything. And if you have a copy left over from your childhood, that disappeared too. Like, that's what this is like. And the question is why? Who's at the controls in this episode, in the world of this episode of the Twilight Zone? It's not the astronauts. They don't know what's going on. The nurse, she seems to not have any clue what's going on. The general, the colonel, whoever, or, no, not the general, an officer, excuse me. He doesn't seem to be aware. So is it some kind of higher intelligence that has erased these men from existence? I don't know. Is Hal and his murderous ways, is that some kind of higher intelligence that's, whatever is really in charge of the universe and life and death and whatever, is that what has taken Hal over and making Hal act crazy? I don't know. I'm just putting out ideas here. But I do believe Stanley was inspired by this. So we've already covered Where Is Everybody? And this one, and When the Sky Was Open. You guys tell me in the comments. Let me know what you think. Here comes the third one, and the third one is called Third from the Sun. How interesting. Is that synchronicity? I don't know. But Third from the Sun is the 14th episode of The Twilight Zone in the first season. Okay? This one, Third from the Sun, is based on a short story of the same name, again by Richard Matheson. I think Richard Matheson... Yeah, he wrote this one too, and When the Sky Was Open. So Richard Matheson also wrote Third from the Sun. In this story, first appeared in the first issue of the magazine Galaxy Science Fiction in October 1950. So before, kids, young people listening, before the internet, people actually read books and magazines and newspapers. That's where they got their stuff from. Okay. And here's the opening narration. Quitting time at the plant. Time for supper now. Time for families. Time for a cool drink on a porch. Time for the quiet rustle of leaf-laden trees that screen out the moon. That screen out the moon. Oh yeah. Leaf-laden trees that screen out the moon. And underneath it all, behind the eyes of the men, hanging invisible over the summer night, is a horror without words, for this is the stillness before the storm. This is the eve of the end. Ooh, nobody could quite do this like Rod Serling. Nobody. Okay, so this is about a bunch of scientists who, well, not a bunch, a couple of scientists. I guess Will Sturka is one of them. He works at a military base and has been producing a great number of H-bombs alongside other staff members who are manufacturing various devastating weapons in preparation for imminent nuclear war. Don't tell me that this didn't influence Stanley. Okay, Sturka realizes that there is only one way to escape. Steal an experimental top-secret spacecraft stored at another base up north. He plans to bring his friend Jerry Ryden, who is trained as a pilot of the spacecraft, along with their wives and Sturka's daughter Jody. Okay, so they plot for months, and what they want to do is escape the place where they live, the planet where they live, because they know there's going to be like a nuclear holocaust. They know that, like, you know, MAD, mutually assured destruction, is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And they want to save themselves and their families. All right. Only problem, like, their little plan to leave is discovered by some, like, slimy, grimy guy. And he tries to stop them. And long story short, this guy tries to stop them from leaving the planet in this stolen spaceship. But, you know, this guy cannot stop them. He's unsuccessful in stopping them. And they leave anyway. And then, after they leave, you know, the planet is destroyed. The nuclear holocaust happens. What does it say here? Nuclear war happens. And that's that. And they're in the spaceship and they're heading for, this is the part that's like creepy. Later that evening, the group has safely escaped their doomed planet and are on course. Sturka says it's hard to believe there are people living on the alien world where they're headed. Ryden points out on the ship's viewer their mysterious destination, 11 million miles away, the third planet from the sun, called Earth. So, we're looking at people who are living, you know, in this story, just like the way people are living in the year 1960 or 1959, but it's not Earth. It's some other planet 11 million miles away, and they escape to our planet, Earth, the third planet from the sun. Now, the closing narration is, behind a tiny ship headed into space is a doomed planet on the verge of suicide. Ahead lies a place called Earth, the third planet from the sun. And for William Sturka and the men and women with him, it's the eve of the beginning in the Twilight Zone. You know, like, what was the inspiration for this story? I don't know. But the fact that it has to do with space travel, and, like, you know, in this story, Earth is like a new planet for these people. And they're about to destroy their own planet with nuclear weapons. That's a lot. That's a lot, especially in the context of what I'm trying to do, trying to understand Stanley's motivations, Stanley's inspirations. Nuclear weapons were like a huge, and they still are, a huge moral dilemma. Okay, we have extremely destructive weapons technology. They did it. Oppenheimer and his band of merry men, successfully, as far as we know. as far as we're told. They successfully created, to my knowledge, the deadliest weapon ever. Have they created, tell me in the comments, have they created anything deadlier than, or more destructive than, the atomic bomb as a weapon since, the Manhattan Project and the whole thing? I don't know. I'm ignorant about that. Tell me, educate me, if you think I need education, and that's fine. I welcome that. But, they created this horribly, deadly, thing, destructive thing, and it could destroy the whole world if, the leaders of various nations get mad and they all start pushing the button in their own respective, places. And that's it. There goes the whole world and everybody in it, and we'll be bombed back into the Stone Age, and the people who survive are going to have to start all over and whatever. That's crazy. Why would they create a weapon like that? Who in their right mind would allow, even if they had the technology, even if they knew how to do it and they knew they could, why would they allow that to happen? And why would they tell the public about it? I mean, I'm not sure, but something tells me there are plenty of, like, really, really deadly weapons that the militaries of this world of ours have that we have no idea about. There's, like, plenty of military technology that I assume there's plenty of military technology that nobody knows about, except the military and the people who have security, or whatever. They have access to all of these secrets and whatever. So if there's all this stuff that we don't know about, okay, cool, we don't know about it, whatever. But, like, why do we know about the atomic bomb? Why do we know? It seems like something they would normally keep a secret, don't you think? I'm just saying, here we are, talking about episodes of Twilight Zone. Hold on, let me blow my nose again. Oh, allergy season, though. Allergy season. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to do a coffee break of my own. So I've covered Where Is Everybody and When the Sky Was Open, and now this one, Third from the Sun. The fourth one is I Shot an Arrow into the Air. Okay. Story by Madeline Champion and teleplay by Rod Serling. I Shot an Arrow into the Air. It's a 15th episode. Her name is Arrow 1. She represents 4.5 years of planning, preparation, and training, and 1,000 years of science, mathematics, and the projected dreams and hopes of not only a nation but the world. She is the first manned aircraft into space, and this is the countdown. The last 5 seconds before man shot an arrow into the air. And I'm going to have to look up that phrase, shot an arrow into the air, because for some reason, that reminds me of something that I've heard before, like Robin Hood. Like, when Robin Hood was dying, he was on his deathbed. They opened a window and somebody propped him up. He was like on his way out. He was dying, and Robin Hood, they propped him up, like one of the merry men propped him up in his bed, sat him up, and gave him his bow and arrow, and he shot an arrow through the window. And I think he said, wherever that arrow lands, that's where you'll bury me, Robin Hood. So I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up. But I don't know if I have time for that right now. But this episode is again, I do believe it very heavily influenced Stanley, very heavily inspired him. I see shades of all of these episodes in 2001. I just do. There's like, maybe these ideas in these episodes have existed for a long time. Maybe they existed for a long time before these authors wrote them in these short stories that were published in these, space magazines or whatever, literature magazines. Or maybe they didn't, because, like, space travel before the 20th century, before, like, golly, maybe before, maybe the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. Like, who the hell was even talking about like space travel? I mean, I know there were like some things like George Miel and stuff like that, but like before the 20th century, it wasn't really on people's minds as much as it was in the 20th century, after the First World War, after the Second World War, after the Manhattan Project and the development of the atomic bomb. Like, why so much interest in space all of a sudden? Because technology? Okay. All right. And the time period after the 1940s, after the Second World War, was called the Atomic Age. Oh my. And that's where we get all that, that really cool vintage retro decor that we see all over social media now. Okay. All right. Let me take my coffee break. Again, my sinuses are giving me the business, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to push on through. So hold on. You go get yourself another cup of coffee, if you need it, and I'm definitely going to do that right now. So hold on 1 minute. Okay, everybody, I'm back, and I've relocated to the kitchen. So if you hear maybe a whirring sound, that's just my refrigerator running. And yes, it is running. If you know, you know. But this is the next episode that I'm going to talk about. I shot an arrow into the air. Meow. This one is horrifying because, again, it's that twist ending that the Twilight Zone is famous for. It says here, I'll read the plot as quickly as I can. It says, a manned spaceflight with 8 crew members crash lands on what the astronauts believe to be an unknown asteroid, with an area of desert and jagged mountains. Only 4 of the crew survive the crash: the commanding officer Donlin, crewmen Corey and Pearson, and a crewman named Hudak, who is badly injured and barely alive, and the chances of rescue or survival are bleak. After they bury the dead men, Donlin and Pearson concern themselves with taking care of Hudak. But Corey, who is only concerned with saving himself, declares that sharing their limited supply of water with Hudak will reduce the chances of survival for the rest of them. This sets Corey at odds with both Pearson and Donlin, who insist that they will care for Hudak and share their water with him for as long as he does survive. Hudak dies a short time later. After they bury him, Donlin has Corey and Pearson trek out into the barren desert to see if there is anything that might improve their chances of survival. 6 hours later, Corey returns alone, claiming not to know where Pearson went. Donlin calls Corey out on having more water in his canteen now than he had when he left, and demands to know where Pearson is. Corey claims that he found Pearson dead and took his water. Not believing his account, Donlin wants to see for himself and forces Corey at gunpoint to lead him to Pearson's body. When they reach the spot, Corey claims to have found Pearson. The body is not there, nor is there any evidence that backs Corey's claim, leaving Donlin more dubious. They later find Pearson near the edge of a mountain, alive but severely wounded. Donlin drops the gun and rushes to Pearson, who wordlessly gestures that he climbed the mountain and saw something. With his last bit of strength, Pearson draws a primitive diagram in the sand with his finger, 2 parallel lines intersected by a perpendicular line, and then dies. Meanwhile, Corey grabs the dropped gun and confesses that he attacked Pearson earlier. He then shoots and kills Donlin and sets out alone, confident that he will survive longer now that he has all the water for himself. And I guess this is dialogue from the episode. Now you make tracks, Mr. Corey. You move out and up like some kind of ghostly billy club was tapping at your ankles and telling you that it was later than you'd think. You scrabble up the rock hills and feel hot sand underneath your feet, and every now and then take a look over your shoulder at a giant sun suspended in a dead and motionless sky, like an unblinking eye that probes at the back of your head in a prolonged accusation. Mr. Corey, last remaining member of a doomed crew, keep moving. Make tracks, Mr. Corey. Push up and push out, because if you stop, maybe sanity will get you by the throat. Maybe realization will pry open your mind, and the horror you left Down in the sand will seep in. Yeah, Mr. Corey, yeah, you better keep moving. That's the order of the moment. Keep moving. Corey climbs a mountain and sees a sign for Reno, along with telephone poles, which was what Pearson had attempted to draw before he died. Realizing that they had in fact never left Earth, and that he had killed his partners for nothing, Corey breaks down, weeping, and begging his deceased crewmates for forgiveness. Oh my God. And this the closing narration, right? Practical joke perpetrated by Mother Nature and a combination of improbable events. Practical joke wearing the trappings of nightmare, of terror, of desperation. Small human drama played out in a desert 97 miles from Reno, Nevada, USA, continent of North America, the Earth, and, of course, the Twilight Zone. Why do I think that this inspired Stanley Kubrick? Is one of the things that at least partially inspired Stanley Kubrick for 2001: A Space Odyssey. Because, okay, here we go, right? Here we go. My interpretation. I just took a sip of coffee. My interpretation. Dave Bowman in 2001. I think that... Remember, okay, especially you, Richard, Mr. Tankard of Tales, Richard, Stashy, you and me, we've been talking about this kind of thing for quite a while, okay? And I haven't checked any of my DMs lately, so please don't think that I'm ignoring you. I've just been very busy. But remember when we were talking about, like, the unreliable narrator thing? In Stanley Kubrick movies, and we got, like, it just seems like Stanley just loves his unreliable narrators, and he takes full advantage of that, like, literary device. He includes, Wendy reading a book by what is probably, the character Holden Caulfield in Catcher in the Rye is very, very probably an unreliable narrator. I think he has, some kind of mental issue, maybe schizophrenia, where he cannot tell the difference between reality and, like, fantasy, or, like, whatever is going on in his mind. I think maybe there's a character, in The Shining that is that way. Maybe that character is Wendy. Who knows? And Joker from Full Metal Jacket, he might very well be an unreliable narrator. Bill Hartford from Eyes Wide Shut, he might very well be an unreliable narrator. What's-his-face from Lolita, Humbert, he might be an unreliable narrator. I think they all are. I'm saying he might because I'm open to the possibility that I might be wrong about my opinion. My opinion might be wrong. So if Humbert, Wendy, Joker, Bill, and whoever else, and probably Alex DeLarge in Clockwork Orange, and, like, if all of these characters in Stanley Kubrick movies can be, or in my opinion they are, unreliable narrators, what about Dave Bowman? Maybe he's an unreliable narrator, and maybe maybe Dave Bowman is the one who is actually responsible for all the horror. Maybe Dave Bowman is the one who's responsible for all those astronauts dying. Maybe he's the one who shut off their life support. Maybe he's the reason that guy who gets popped out of the spaceship and he floats around in space and dies. Maybe that isn't Hal's doing. Maybe that's Dave Bowman who did it. Maybe, and this character, what's his face? Corey, Officer Corey, played by Dewey Martin. Okay. This Corey person is mean and awful and selfish and greedy and concerned only with himself. And they're all, all of these other people die. There's 8 crew members. 4 of them die right away. And then the rest of them die one by one, as they're trying to, figure out how to survive. The last one left alive is Corey. And, he's prepared to shoot people. He's He lies. He's all kinds of stuff. Maybe this is Dave Bowman. Maybe this is the inspiration for Dave Bowman. He's the last one left alive. And just like this Corey character in this episode, I shot an arrow into the air. He does all of this underhanded, dirty stuff to make sure he's the one who survives. And then when he does survive, he's the last one left. He hates himself for it. He begs his deceased crewmates for forgiveness. Well, it's too late, buddy. They're dead. And, you're at least partially the reason why most of them are dead. Same thing might be going on with Dave. I don't know. Because, again, I don't know how much of this, HAL thing. I don't know what to think of it. The HAL computer. What's up with the HAL computer? How evil is HAL? Or is HAL even... Is HAL evil? HAL says in the movie in 2001, he says, "No, Dave, I can't let you guys jeopardize this mission. It's too important." Wait a minute. Why does HAL even say that? Why does HAL think that the crew of the Discovery 1 are capable of jeopardizing the mission? Why would they want to jeopardize maybe HAL knows something that we don't know, the audience. I'm just saying, I'm just putting that out there. But, okay, I shot an arrow into the air. So this Corey person reminds me, in my estimation of things, reminds me of the Dave Bowman character. Let's keep it moving on to the next episode. This is the one that really, 2001, that really, really reminded me of this episode of the Twilight Zone. I might have mentioned this in previous videos. Elegy is the title, is the 12th episode of the Twilight Zone first season, episode 20. No, I'm sorry, I said 12. No, the 20th episode. Episode 20 of the first season. And it was aired in 1960, February 19th. Alright. Episode was based on a short story by Charles Beaumont, published in the February 1953 issue of Imagination, Stories of Science and Fantasy. Opening narration. The time is the day after tomorrow. The place, a far corner of the universe. A cast of characters, 3 men lost amongst the stars. 3 men sharing the common urgency of all men lost. They're looking for home. And in a moment, they'll find home. Not a home that is a place to be seen, but strange, unexplainable experience to be felt. Okay, here we go. It's September 2185. The year 2185. While on a routine geological mission, astronauts Myers, Weber, and Kirby land their spaceship on a remote asteroid 655 million miles away from Earth after running low on fuel. They find that the atmosphere and gravity are identical to Earth's. Opening the hatch to the spaceship, they find they have landed near a farm. They initially think they have traveled back in time due to the old tractor they find, although they notice that there are 2 suns in the sky. They find a farmer gazing off into the distance and try to get his attention, but realize he is just a statue. They hear band music in the distance and follow it to a town to find the music is being played on a speaker. The band is also just statues. The astronauts are disturbed by their surroundings as everything and everyone is eerily motionless. They hypothesize that time may pass at a different rate, but a nearby grandfather clock without hands leads them to believe that time passes normally and that there is some other reason for everyone's motionlessness. Again, time, Chronos, Saturn, and then Saturn's relationship to Jupiter. I just want you to keep that in mind and make a mental note of it for the future when I do future videos about 2001. They are further confused as the statues appear to feel like flesh or something similar to it. They decide to split up and explore it. One astronaut finds an odd beauty contest where an unattractive woman has been crowned the winner. After the astronaut departs, a man in the audience turns and smiles. Converging on the center of town, they are startled to find someone who does move, Jeremy Wickwire, the caretaker of this place. He is told by the men that a nuclear war, a nuclear war, destroyed much of the Earth in 1985, and that it has taken 200 years to recover from it. Wickwire explains to the astronauts that the asteroid they have landed on is an exclusive cemetery called Happy Glades, founded in 1973, where rich people can live out their life's greatest fantasy after they die. Which doesn't make sense. How can you live after you die? But never mind. The town is one of many areas where people may be placed. Others include the Roman era, the Egyptian era, and the Wild West. Interesting. This town is the most popular because it represents a time in American culture where creature comforts were most abundant. Okay. Wickwire serves the three men wine. Just like Dave Bowman is drinking wine in the last couple of scenes of 2001. Anyway, he serves the three men wine and asks each man what his greatest wish is. All three reply that they wish they were on their ship heading for home. Wickwire misunderstood who the astronauts were, thinking they were from the Happy Glades organization. He explains the reason Happy Glades exists is because it's not possible to have peace on Earth. Wickwire, who explains that he is a robot that has been deactivated for about 200 years and only turns on for occasional duties, apologizes to them and explains that it is his job to ensure peace and tranquility at Happy Glades. Suddenly, they realize that their drinks have been poisoned with what Wickwire refers to as eternifying fluid. As the men are dying, the astronaut pleads for an antidote and that they mean no harm. Wickwire responds that they are men, and while there are men, there can be no peace. Later, Wickwire reinstalls the embalmed astronauts in their ship, posing them at their posts as if they were on their way home. Ooh, this is one hell of an episode, let me tell you. And the idea that, kind of like funerals and tombs and things like that, especially with regard to places like Egypt in the ancient world, with their very lavish tombs filled with all this stuff, like they thought they could take it with them. They thought they could take it with them. They can't. You can't. But I guess the Egyptians get an A for effort. This is the closing narration. Kirby, Weber, and Myers, three men lost. They shared a common wish, a simple one really. They wanted to be aboard their ship headed for home. And fate, a laughing fate, a practical jokester with a smile stretched across the stars, saw to it that they got their wish, with just one reservation. The wish came true, but only in the Twilight Zone. Okay, why does this remind me of 2001? Because the last part where Dave goes through all the psychedelic trippy stuff, okay, after everybody else dies and he's the last one left. Again, I think I just had that idea right now as I was making this video that, I said to myself, oh shit, wait a minute. Stanley did it again. Dave Bowman, we can't trust him. He's an unreliable narrator. Just like Wendy, just like Joker, just like Bill Hartford, just like Humber Humbert, just like, again, possibly Alex DeLarge, probably Barry Lyndon too. Who the hell knows? So, and the last part of the movie where he's in that, like I talked about in this first video over here, right? 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick analysis. He ends up in this neoclassical room in what Stanley calls, in, I guess, the source where he talks about it, he says a wrong idea of French architecture. Okay. And I explained, it's been identified, I guess, by people who are very good at identifying that kind of thing, that it's not just French, it's neoclassical French, and, the neoclassical period of, I guess, architecture and interior design, furniture and what have you, coincides with the lifespan, and the lifetime of Napoleon Bonaparte. All right. And in this, where does it say? Hold on. And it says, Lord, wait a minute. the town where they are on this, I guess, asteroid is the most popular in this like graveyard because it represents a time in American culture where creature comforts were most abundant. In the episode itself, when they have this discussion, they're in a room filled with like very ornate furniture. Not neoclassical furniture, but like, I think late 19th century, like Victorian era furniture, and it's very ornate and very beautiful, and it looks very plush. And that's kind of what is going on. Like, that's what Stanley says. Again, I think it's in that interview, not the interview, but the telephone call with that Japanese director. And he says, you know, so these entities that have prepared this place for David Bowman, they chose this time period. They chose the architecture or, you know, the furniture and whatever from this time period because it's a zoo. And they thought that, you know, their understanding of human beings from planet Earth, they thought these gods or whatever in the movie, they thought that that's what David Bowman would enjoy as far as comfort, and they thought that he would find it pretty and he would be comfortable there. Kind of like what Jeremy Wickwire, the caretaker of this asteroid graveyard, says, oh, you know, people want this place because it represents American culture and where creature comforts were most abundant. That could also, you could very easily be referring to the neoclassical period. And creature comforts were most abundant in the neoclassical period if you were a very wealthy person. Or if you were somebody like, well, Napoleon. Or that slut Josephine. Yes, I said slut. I'm not letting go of that. She's a hoe. But, you know, it's almost not identical to this episode of the Twilight Zone, but I can very easily see or envision Stanley getting his idea about that straight from here. What do you all think? Tell me in the comments. I can't wait to read them. Okay, so my allergies are out of control, but I will try to like blast through these. So we've got one, people are alike all over. The shelter, not about space, but yes, about the bomb. Okay, and Death Ship with Death Ship and Odyssey of Flight 33. I gotta get through all of these. Okay, the plot isn't very long for People Are Alike All Over. This is episode 25 of the first season, an opening narration. Alright? You're looking at a species of flimsy little two-legged animal with extremely small heads, whose name is man. Warren Markison, age 35. Samuel A. Conrad, age 31. They're taking a highway into space. Man unshackling himself and sending his tiny groping fingers up into the unknown. Their destination is Mars, and in just a moment we'll land there with them. Okay, here we go. This is going to be good. Okay, I just said zoo. You know, Stanley says that these entities, these powers that be, put Dave Bowman into a zoo and try to recreate his natural habitat, so to speak, with that gaudy-ass neoclassical furniture. Okay, so here we go. Two astronauts discuss an impending mission to Mars. One of them, Markison, is a positive thinker who believes that people are alike all over, even on the red planet. The other astronaut, Conrad, has a more cynical view of human interplanetary nature. After their rocket lands on Mars, the impact is so severe that Markison is critically injured. Knowing that he is dying, Markison pleads with Conrad to open the door of their ship so he can at least see that for which he has given his life. Ooh, that's deep. That's very deep. Conrad refuses, still fearful of what may await outside, and Markison dies. Now alone, Conrad hears a rhythmic sound reverberating upon the ship's hull, expecting some unnamed alien evil. His apprehension turns to joy when he opens the hatch and sees Martians that indeed appear to be human, having mind-reading abilities and give the impression of being most amicable, especially the beautiful Tinia, who welcomes and reassures him. The hospitable locals lead their honored guests to his residence. Okay, this is where it gets creepy. an interior living space furnished precisely in the same manner as one on Earth, specifically a living space in middle-class America would have been. Okay. The locals leave, and Conrad asks if he will see Tinia again. She doesn't respond, but another local assures Conrad he will see her again. Conrad relaxes, but soon discovers that his room is windowless. Delta builder. Delta, I hope you're listening. Conrad relaxes, but soon discovers that his room is windowless and the doors cannot be opened. One of the walls slides apart, and Conrad realizes that he has become a caged exhibit in a Martian alien zoo. Conrad picks up a sign saying, "Earth creature," in his native habitat, and throws it on the floor as Tinia leaves distraught. In the episode's closing lines, Conrad grips the bars and proclaims, "Marcusson, Marcusson, you were right, people are alike everywhere." Oh, shit. Okay, so the zoo thing. Okay, that's what Stanley says about Dave Bowman and the gods, these advanced entities or beings. They pick that room for Dave. The walls, the panels on the walls, the statues, the furniture, the food, the bed, everything, his clothes, everything. And they pick it because they think it's something that he will like. That they think that that's what, that will mimic whatever it was that he was used to in his natural habitat on planet Earth. And they're wrong. Okay, like in the year 2001, most of us did not live in rooms that looked like that. Now, did we? But these godlike beings in 2001, that's what they pick for Dave Bowman. And these Martians in this episode, that's what they pick for, Conrad, the astronaut. And they put him in a zoo. They think he's a curiosity. They don't think of him as an equal. They think of him as the way we think of animals that we imprison in zoos. We think, oh, how interesting they are, how fun they are to look at, acting the way whichever animal acts whichever way. And if you think about it, zoos are just very cruel. Zoos, aquariums, whatever. No, these animals should be in their real natural habitat, living their lives, and putting them in cages, putting them, or trying to mimic their natural environment, which they can't do, no matter how hard they try, and have people just walk by and stare at them, and have children throwing things at them or whatever. No, that's not okay. So it's not okay to do to an animal, and of course it's also not okay to do that to a human being. But these Martians, they're advanced. They have mind-reading abilities. Tinia, the pretty one, the lady that Conrad seems to, he seems to fancy her. She seems to be the only one with a conscience. And whenever she looks at Conrad in this episode, there's like a sadness in her eyes because she knows that what her fellow Martians are doing to him is wrong. But, he has no idea what's going on. She can't communicate that to him. And she can't say anything because she doesn't want to stick out from her own, people, or her own Martians, whatever, and, be ostracized by them or ridiculed by them for not having the same opinions as them. That can be likened to, vegetarians and vegans and animal rights people who say, yeah, no, this is not okay. Eating animals, putting them in cages, putting them on display in zoos. There are those who do say that it's wrong and openly campaign, and they do activism for that. But there's probably a lot of people who don't say a word who feel that way. Vegans, vegetarians, animal rights people, because they don't want to constantly argue with everybody. All right. And they know that whatever they have to say will fall on deaf ears, just like the Tinia character here. And again, this is very, very much like 2001 because these Martians pick out like a middle-aged living room, a living space in middle-class America for Conrad. They think that's what he's going to like. Yeah, middle-class living room with a TV and a couch and, I guess food. And if I remember the episode correctly, before he realizes what's going on, he sits down on the couch and kicks back and lights up a cigarette and, puts his feet up or whatever. He doesn't realize that he's in a cage yet. He doesn't realize yet that he has been imprisoned, because it's a very nice, comfortable looking prison. And like it says here, there's no windows. The doors don't work. Kind of like what me and Delta were talking about with The Shining, and there's doors, but there's no rooms behind those doors. There's windows, but there are rather curtains, drapes, but there's no windows behind those drapes. There's a lot of false doors in The Shining, kind of like this episode. Oh, Stanley. Oh, Stanley was I'm now 100% convinced that Stanley was very, very heavily inspired by what he saw in the Twilight Zone. Okay, people are alike everywhere. So these gods or these entities in 2001, are they, quote unquote people? Are they just very, very advanced people? And there's a certain cruelty to what they're doing. Like I said, I don't trust Dave Bowman as a narrator. Something's wrong with him. Just like a lot of Stanley's, whoever it is that the story is, the point of view that the story is being told from. Like whether it's Dave Bowman, Humbert, Wendy, etc., right? That no good Joker from Full Metal Jacket. He's the kind of guy that'll get everybody killed in a combat situation. No, I don't trust him. Excuse me. He's unreliable, yeah, but these godlike entities who are so advanced that they are in control of so many aspects of at least our solar system, maybe the whole universe, who knows? They get a lot of shit wrong, even though they're supposed to be all powerful and all knowing. Now, wait a minute. If they're all powerful and all knowing, in 2001, I'm talking about the entities that put Dave in that room at the end. If they're so all powerful and all knowing, why couldn't they pick a better room for him? And this elegy, and we talked about people are alike all over. What the hell? Let me move on to the next one, just because I want to kind of whip through these as quickly as I'm going to have to take another coffee break, because this is I've given myself too much to do. The Shelter. Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to take a coffee break before I proceed with this one. I'll read this first little part, opening narration and what have you. This was season 3. So this last one, okay, this is still season 1. People are alike all over. The Shelter is season 3, episode 3, written by Rod Serling. Okay, The Shelter is episode 68 of the Twilight, in total, the 68th episode. It originally aired on September 29th, 1961 on CBS. It is one of the few Twilight Zone episodes to feature no supernatural or sci-fi elements. Okay. Opening narration. What you're about to watch is a nightmare. It is not meant to be prophetic. It need not happen. It's the fervent and urgent prayer of all men of good will that it never shall happen. But in this place, in this moment, it does happen. This is the Twilight Zone. Okay, let me take a little coffee break. Right, get my head together. I'll come back, do this, and do the Death Ship, and do Odyssey of Flight 33, and we'll talk a little bit about the Flying Dutchman, and then I'm out. Okay, so again, The Shelter. It's about a bomb shelter. Yes, nuclear war, once again, which I believe Stanley Kubrick was absolutely obsessed with. So, okay, give me a minute, refill your coffee cup, get another bun, get another donut, whatever you gotta do. Maybe take a little break yourself, because this is a lot, isn't it? Again, I've got so much more cooking. I've got so much more cooking for you in future videos about this. We're going to talk about the food. We're going to talk, I already mentioned Jupiter in this first video. Oh, we're going to talk some more about Jupiter. There's a lot going on. And like I told you, I think that I have solve the mystery of the monolith. But you're just going to have to stay tuned for future videos to see what that is. So hold on, let me take a coffee break. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Had my little coffee, had my little break, and let us continue. Now, before I get going with this one, I want to like get something out of my head and onto this video. I was just thinking about like, you know, how I said again in this first video over here, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick analysis. You know, how like near the, like right around the time that the Twilight Zone got started, 59, and how like there was this kind of like this shift from, in the media at the time, this obsession over like cowboys and Indians and Western films and TV shows, and that kind of all switched over into space stuff, like, you know, Martians, aliens, spaceships, going to the moon and like stuff like that. And like for a little while they were overlapping, like cowboys and Indians and the Wild West and, you know, the OK Corral and all that kind of thing. And what was that show? Wagon Train and all this stuff. And then it switched over to shows that were exploring space and stuff like that. What I realized that both of those things have in common is the theme of conquest. The theme of, you know, as far as the United States and the American West, the idea of expansion, manifest destiny, you know, figures like Lewis and Clark exploring the Western United States or mapping out, you know, that part of the country and their bravery and their whatever. But like this is all to do with conquest, and this is all to do with, again, Westerns and the Wild West. This is all to do with like expansion and manifest destiny, and that is to do with conquest and getting that land in, you know, for the United States, for the government, so that it can be exploited by all of these different interests, and people can, again, take advantage of the trees and the water and the minerals, mining and whatever. It's about that. And then space, we shift over to space, and like I said, Martians and spaceships and going to the moon is the same thing. It's just more, instead of expanding westward, it's expanding upward into the sky and into the heavens. And again, it's about, you know, how can you exploit that or use it as like this really kind of strong strategic position for military stuff. And then I was thinking, this is all during my coffee break now. And then I said, wait a minute. This connects us to The Shining again. Because, again, we'll talk about the psychedelic portion of 2001 in a future video. But like that car ride, the Torrance family driving to the Overlook Hotel, and Wendy says, isn't this where the Donner Party got stranded? And they're in Colorado, right? And Jack is like, no, that was further out west in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And Danny says, what was the Donner Party? And then Jack explains it was a group of people in covered wagon times, and they were settlers, and they got stranded in the snow, and they had to resort to cannibalism to survive. And Danny says, do you mean they ate each other up? And Jack says they had to, you know, to survive. And Wendy's like, come on, Jack. And then Danny says, it's okay, Mom. I know all about cannibalism. I saw it on television. So I think that that's a carryover in The Shining. The mention of the Donner Party, the mention of settlers in covered wagon times going west for the purpose of exploiting the land. There is a connection to 2001. Okay, so these people in, you know, what was then thought of as the future are again expanding into the heavens to the moon, and then to Jupiter. And they kind of do eat each other up. Those creatures in the beginning, like they fight each other using as weapons the bones of their dead. Oh my God. Or is it their dead or the animal that they've killed? But it doesn't matter. Like killing is an integral part of it. That's why the food in 2001 is so important. I'll cover that. I'll talk about that in a future video. But I just wanted to get it out like while I was thinking about it. So here we are. Okay, I already read the opening narration, The Shelter. This is not about space. No, this is about shit that could happen on planet Earth. Here we go. It's a typical evening in a typical suburban community outside of New York City. At the residence of physician Bill Stockton, he enjoys a birthday party being thrown for him by his wife Grace and their son Paul. Okay. Her name is Grace, eh? Ah, boy. Also at the party are Jerry, Harlow, Bill's brother-in-law, Frank Henderson, and Marty Weiss, Bill and Jerry's former college roommates, and the wives and children of Jerry, Frank, and Marty. Bill is well known and liked by this gathering. Moreover, Bill has repeatedly administered to the health and well-being of each one of his guests. Everyone is friendly and jovial, even when mention is made of Bill's late-night work on a fallout shelter, which he has built in his basement. Suddenly, a civil defense announcement overheard by young Paul is made that unidentified objects, also known as UFOs, have been detected heading for the United States. In these times, everyone knows what this means: nuclear attack. As panic ensues, Stockton locks himself and his family into his shelter. His friends become hysterical and now want to occupy the shelter. Stockton offers his basement to the guests, but the shelter itself has sufficient air, provisions, and space for a total of 3 people. The once friendly neighbors do not accept this. All of the previous cordiality is now replaced with soaring desperation. Pent-up hostility, nativism, and other suppressed emotions boil to the surface. They break down the shelter door with an improvised battering ram. Just then, a final civil defense broadcast announces that the objects have been identified as harmless satellites and that no danger is present. His neighbors apologize to each other and to the doctor for their behavior, yet Stockton wonders aloud if they were all destroyed without a bomb dropping. Whoo, shit. The implications of this are like staggering. This is what the atomic bomb did to the world. People, like before the invention of that evil weapon, like all weapons are evil in their own way, but the atomic bomb, for some reason, it's special. It's unique. It brought out the worst in humanity, like the very worst in humanity, and it did it very quickly in a very kind of concentrated form. It brought out all of our prejudices, all of our meanness, all of our malice, all the stuff. You know, if it does happen, if like a nuclear attack happens and one country destroys another country and then another country retaliates, mad, mutually assured destruction, and the whole thing that, Stanley talks about in the other movie, Strangelove, right? How I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. Okay, so these people, they're nice to each other when everything's going okay, but when the chips are down, they're willing to kill each other for a space in the shelter. It's every man for himself, right? And the closing narration, here it is: no moral, no message, no prophetic tract, just a simple statement of fact. For civilization to survive, the human race has to remain civilized. Tonight's very small exercise in logic from the Twilight Zone. That's the evil of the atomic bomb. Or is it evil? Stockton wonders aloud if they were all destroyed without a bomb dropping. So it's not, the weapon is not deadly just because if it's used, it causes like massive destruction. No, it's about what it's capable of, whether it's used or not. Maybe it's even more destructive if it's not used, because the thing itself, the specter, the threat of the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation is horrifying. And people, from what I'm told, people were building bomb shelters under their houses or in the backyard if they had the space to do it. They were all worried. Like children in schools were like doing drills, like, okay, what do we do, children, if the time comes, like, y'all got to be ready, right? That's terrifying. And to live that way and think, like, maybe at the time that, the United States and Russia were like in this Cold War, and everybody was afraid that, like, if you're American, you were afraid that, like, whoever, Nikita Khrushchev or whoever would, like, lose his mind and push the button. What then? That's terrifying, and that'll do a number on your psyche. Right? Maybe that is the destruction of the atomic bomb. Not just what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but, like, what happened to people's minds and what they... This paradigm shift that was made possible, and that was brought on by the invention of this horrible weapon. Okay? The Zayin. Yeah? Like, the atomic bomb is not just a gun, it's not just a sword, it's not just a tank, it's not just a missile. No, it's something that allegedly, I'm not very educated about this, but allegedly just dissolves things. Wow. And this is how people would react if push came to shove. It's a lot to think about. So, again, Stanley Kubrick seems to me to have been obsessed with the atomic bomb, and even in stories where he doesn't mention it directly, it's there. Just like The Shining. Summer 42? Yeah. Let's keep it moving. Here it is, the Death Ship. And, this plot, though. This one, again, I think that this can be the Death Ship in this episode, which is from season 4, episode 6. The Death Ship in this episode can be compared to the Discovery 1 in 2001, A Space Odyssey. Death Ship is an episode of the American television anthology series The Twilight Zone, yada yada yada, based on a 1953 short story with the same title by Richard Matheson. Okay. Oh dear, wait a minute, we got the Flying Dutchman twice. Ooh, Lord, wait a minute now. Hold on. Okay, so Odyssey of Flight 33 and Death Ship is inspired by the legend of the Flying Dutchman. Okay, so, alright, so Stanley, Stanley was aware of this. I think he must have been. In this episode, a spaceship crew discovers a wrecked replica of their ship with their own dead bodies inside. Ooh. Opening narration. Let me get through this. Picture of the spaceship E-89 cruising above the 13th planet of star system 51, the year 1997. In a little while, supposedly, the ship will be landed and specimens taken, vegetable, mineral, and, if any, animal. These will be brought back to the overpopulated Earth, where technicians will evaluate them, and if everything is satisfactory, stamp their findings with the word inhabitable and open up yet another planet for colonization. These are the things that are supposed to happen. Picture of the crew of the spaceship E-89. Captain Ross, Lieutenant Mason, Lieutenant Carter. 3 men who have just reached a place which is as far from home as they will ever be. 3 men who in a matter of minutes will be plunged into the darkest nightmare reaches of the Twilight Zone. Okay, so here's the plot. Let me try and whip through this one. The space cruiser E-89, crewed by Captain Paul Ross, Lieutenant Ted Mason, and Lieutenant Mike Carter, is on a mission to analyze new worlds and discover if they are suitable for colonization. Again, colonization, expansion, colonialism. Oh dear, oh dear. While orbiting a planet, Mason sees a metallic glint in the landscape. He conjectures that this might be a sign of alien life, but the pragmatic Captain Ross disagrees. Nevertheless, the cruiser prepares to land next to the mysterious object. After landing, the men find that the gleaming comes from the wreck of a ship exactly like their own. Inside the craft, they discover their own lifeless bodies. Mason and Carter go numb with shock. Ross, struggling for an explanation, decides that they have bent time in such a way as to get a glimpse of the future. He says to avoid their fate, they must refrain from taking off again. Oh my God, how symbolic is that? Like you have to live in the past to avoid dying? What? Okay, never mind. Let's keep it moving. Mason and Carter fiercely object to this plan, especially once they find that atmospheric interference prevents their contacting anyone for help, and that the frigid nighttime temperatures of the planet will force them to rapidly exhaust the ship's energy reserves on heat. Ross pulls rank and makes them to make them comply. Okay, rank. In a situation like this, rank shouldn't really matter to anybody, now should it? But while looking out the viewport, Carter is transported back to a country lane on Earth. There he encounters people from his past. He runs to the house that his wife and he shared and finds it empty except for a telegram notifying her that he has died in the line of duty. Carter is wrenched from his vision by Ross. As Carter describes what he has just experienced, he realizes that the people he encountered are dead. Ross insists it was a delusion. The two then find Mason has vanished. He is having an emotional reunion with his wife and child. When Ross pulls him back, Mason is enraged and wants to be allowed back, maintaining that his encounter with his family was real. From Mason's pocket, Ross pulls a newspaper clipping about the death of Mason's wife and child. The captain then posits a new theory about what is going on. The planet is inhabited by telepathic aliens who are using illusions to keep them from reporting back to Earth, thus averting colonization of their home. Ross says that if they take the E-89 back up to space, that should break the spell. The men take E-89 back in orbit. Mason and Carter admit that Ross may have been right about the aliens. Ross then insists on landing the craft again to gather foreign samples to bring back to Earth. When they land again, the wreck of their craft is still present. The successive disproving of Ross's theories, combined with an intuitive knowledge of their condition, brings Mason and Carter to the realization that they already crashed and are dead. Their afterlife visits were real, and their current situation is the illusion. Ross refuses to accept this. He rejects his crew's pleas to be allowed to embrace their deaths and be reunited with their loved ones, and says that they will go over it again and again until he figures out an alternative explanation. In compliance with Ross's order, the men are returned to the moment where Mason first spotted the E-89's wreckage, doomed to relive the past several hours of investigation over and over. Ooh, again, this makes me think of 2001. Is that what's going on? Like with David Bowman, as he's going towards allegedly Jupiter and his final destination of that room with the neoclassical furniture. Is he alive during that time, or is he dying or dead? Is he going through, like, with all those trippy psychedelic colors, is he going through a portal that is like he's on his way to the afterlife? And then, you know, in when we see him in that room eating dinner and lying in bed and whatever, is that actually happening, or is that happening just in his mind? Is his brain dying? And then at the end, like the fetus floating above his reincarnation floating above planet Earth. Is that, like, again, is Stanley telling us it's going to happen all over again? I don't know. Here's the closing narration. Picture of a man who will not see anything he does not choose to see, including his own death. So I think David Bowman is also, he doesn't want to confront his own death or his own mortality. And the moment when he does confront his own death and his own mortality there's a lot of Christian symbolism there, and I'll talk about that in a future video. A man of such indomitable will that even the 2 men beneath his command are not allowed to see the truth, which truth is that they are no longer among the living, that the movements they make and the words they speak have all been made and spoken countless times before, and will be made and spoken countless times again, perhaps even into eternity. Picture of a latter-day Flying Dutchman sailing into the Twilight Zone. Okay. I mean, really, is that what's going on with David Bowman? And he's the one calling the shots. Like, everybody else on that spaceship dies. Everybody else on the Discovery 1 in 2001, A Space Odyssey, died except him. Except him. Again, I'm beginning to really seriously question whether or not Hal is the thing that went crazy. Because Hal isn't a person, Hal is a computer. So can a computer go crazy? I don't think so. It's not a person, it doesn't have a mind. But maybe Dave Bowman is the one who's lost his mind, and he's the one who wants to continue with this mission no matter what. He doesn't disable Hal, he doesn't disable Hal with the intent of cutting off the mission and going back to Earth. No. Because a bunch of people are dead, and they died on his watch and possibly by his hand. So maybe he doesn't want to confront whatever's waiting for him if he goes back to Earth and has to suffer the consequences of being responsible for that many deaths. So maybe it's not Hal that killed anybody. Maybe it's Dave. Maybe Dave's the one who lost his mind. And why did he lose his mind? I don't know. We don't know much about Dave. We don't know anything about his life on planet Earth. We don't know what led to him becoming an astronaut or a scientist or whatever he is. We just know when we first encounter him, we encounter him on this spaceship. And again, everything's blamed on Hal. All the bad stuff that happens is blamed on Hal. But, maybe it's not Hal at all. And maybe that's why Dave was trying to disable Hal to destroy evidence of his murders. He murdered all these people, and Hal was witness to the whole thing. I'm just thinking out loud. You guys let me know what you think, whether or not I'm on to something. Okay, last episode that we'll cover, and then I'll get to the Flying Dutchman, and then we'll be done. The Odyssey, again. Space Odyssey? Yep, the Odyssey of Flight 33. By the way, your spine, everybody's spine, has 33 vertebrae. Did you know that? Never mind, but let's take a look at. I learned that from a friend recently. Hello, if you're listening. The Odyssey of Flight 33 is episode 54 of the American television anthology series The Twilight Zone, the 18th episode of the 2nd season. Okay, it was broadcast in February 1961. An unlikely break of the time barrier finds a commercial airliner sent back into the prehistoric age. Just like 2001, when we see those prehistoric creatures acting all kinds of crazy. And, we're being shown these pictures by Stanley Kubrick, but from whose perspective? Okay? Who's telling the story here? Who is the narrator? Or who is the author of what we're seeing here? I mean, Stanley Kubrick's the director, yeah, and the writer, along with Arthur C. Clarke. I'm starting to wonder. Please forgive me. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Maybe I need to shut up. But no, it's my video. I won't shut up. Maybe I'm thinking out loud. Maybe Stanley had about as much respect for Arthur C. Clarke as he had for Stephen King. I don't know. Or, if you've been riding with me for however long, you know how I feel about Sneezy. So, that's what I call him, Sneezy. Sneezy, Sneezy Mick, Snowman. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, so, I don't know. Arthur C. Clarke seems like a little sketchy to me. Okay? Because what the thing says is like, where's the thing? Hold on. Okay, so Arthur C. Clarke is based on, 2001 is based on Clarke's short story from 1951 called The Sentinel and other short stories by Clarke. Okay. And then Clarke turned this movie into a novel after it was shot. But apparently he also, the screenplay was written by Kubrick and science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke, and was inspired by, okay. So Clarke also published a novelization of the film, in part written concurrently with the screenplay after the film's release. Like, what? I don't know what the point of that was. Stanley's playing games again, and I love it. But you see, I see this whole thing about Arthur Clarke and the source material, The Sentinel, and the novel being published after the film was made. That just don't make no sense to me. But maybe it doesn't make sense to me because I don't know what I don't know. If you know what I don't know, tell me in the comments, please. I welcome it. Anyway, let me get back to this thing. The Odyssey of Flight 33. Here we go with the opening. Oh, and hold on. The tale is a modern retelling of the Flying Dutchman. So the Odyssey of Flight 33 and this one, Death Ship, both kind of like based on the Flying Dutchman, at least partially. And written by Rod Serling. Was this written by Rod Serling? No, this was written by Richard Matheson, but, okay, never mind. But again with the Flying Dutchman. What's up with the Flying Dutchman? Delta, if you know about this, because, I think you are Dutch, help me with this Flying Dutchman thing. Anyway, opening narration. You're riding on a jet airliner en route from London to New York. You're at 35,000 feet atop an overcast and roughly 55 minutes from Idlewild Airport. But what you've seen occur inside the cockpit of this plane is no reflection of the aircraft or the crew. It's a safe, well-engineered, perfectly designed machine. And the men you've just met are a trained, cool, highly efficient team. The problem is simply that the plane is going too fast, and there is nothing within the realm of knowledge, or at least logic, to explain it. Unbeknownst to the passenger and crew, this plane is heading into an uncharted region, well off the beaten track of commercial travelers. It's moving into the Twilight Zone. What you're about to see, we call the Odyssey of Flight 33. Okay, let me read this real quick, and then I'll get to the page on the Flying Dutchman, and then that's that. Global Airlines Flight 33 is en route from London to New York City. About 50 minutes from Idlewild Airport, Captain Farver and his crew notice that the ground speed of their Boeing 707 is rapidly increasing beyond all reason. Their true airspeed remains constant, so there is no risk of the plane breaking up. They can no longer contact anyone by radio. The plane travels through a flash of light and severe turbulence. The captain wonders if they have gone through the sound barrier. There is no apparent damage to the aircraft. Still unable to contact anyone on the ground, and at the risk of potential collision with other aircraft, Farver finally decides to descend below the clouds. The crew is able to identify the coastline of Manhattan Island and other geographic landmarks, but there is no city. The crew realizes that they have traveled far back in time when they see grazing dinosaurs. Okay. Their only hope of returning to the present day is to increase altitude and speed in an attempt to catch the same quote-unquote jet stream. After another flash of light and violent shaking, New York City is once again visible, and although they still cannot contact Idlewild, they are able to reach LaGuardia Airport. However, the air traffic controller on the radio does not understand their technological references. The controller eventually clears the aircraft to land at LaGuardia, but orders the captain to report to the CAA office afterward. The captain remarks that they haven't called the Federal Aviation Agency by that name in years. The co-pilot spots the buildings and structures from the New York World's Fair of 1939 below, making the crew realize that they did come back, but not far enough. The captain attempts one more ascent before the fuel runs out, in an effort to return the plane to 1961. He addresses the passengers, explaining that they have traveled back in time. Quote, "All I ask of you is that you remain calm," end quote. He then tells the passengers over the PA system, "and pray." Interesting. Remain calm and pray, eh? I guess that's all they can do. Closing narration. A global jetliner en route from London to New York on an uneventful afternoon in the year 1961, but now reported overdue and missing, and by now searched for on land, sea, and air by anguished human beings, fearful of what they'll find. But you and I know where she is. You and I know what's happened. So if some moment, any moment, you hear the sound of jet engines flying on top the overcast, engines that sound searching and lost, engines that sound desperate, shoot up a flare or do something, that would be Global 33 trying to get home from the Twilight Zone. Oh my God. Okay, so this is not space travel, it's just an airplane. But both of these, the Odyssey of Flight 33 and Death Ship, are, from what we're told, they're retellings or remixes of the Flying Dutchman. Okay, let's look at the Flying Dutchman. I don't know how much of this I'm going to read, because like I've already been talking at you for quite some time. We've passed the 2-hour mark, so I hope you enjoy coffee a lot. But let me just read this first paragraph and see what we've got here. The Flying Dutchman, in Dutch, de Vliegende Hollander, is a legendary ghost ship, allegedly never able to make port, but doomed to sail the sea forever. The myths and ghost stories are likely to have originated from the 17th century golden age of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. I don't know what VOC stands for, but I'll look it up eventually. And of Dutch maritime power. The oldest known extant version of the legend dates from the late 18th century. Okay. So right about the time when Napoleon was alive. All right. According to the legend, if hailed by another ship, the crew of the Flying Dutchman might try to send messages to land or to people long dead. Reported sightings in the 19th and 20th centuries claimed that the ship glowed with a ghostly light. In ocean lore, the sight of this phantom ship functions as a portent of doom. It was commonly believed that the Flying Dutchman was a 17th century cargo vessel known as a fluit. What's a fluit? A Dutch type of sailing vessel originally designed by the shipwrights of Hoorn as a dedicated cargo vessel. Okay, so cargo, commerce, more money. Origins. Okay. The first known print reference to the ship appears in travels in various part of Europe, Asia, and Africa during a series of 30 years and upwards, 1790, by John MacDonald. Okay. The common story. Okay. The weather was so stormy that the sailors said they saw the Flying Dutchman. The common story is that the Dutchman came to the Cape in distress of weather and wanted to get into harbor, but could not get a pilot to conduct her and was lost, and that ever since in bad weather her vision appears. Okay. Do we have? Oh, like they don't. Is this just like a legend, or is there a story? Has a story been published about this? That's what I'm not clear on, and I don't know where this comes from. Adaptations of what? Tell me what the original source material is. It's a legendary ghost ship. Okay, cool. Flying Dutchman disambiguation. I'm not going to look at that. Allegedly never. Okay, ghost ship allegedly never able to make port. The myths and ghost stories. So it sounds like there's more than one. Okay, there's more than one story. Myths and ghost stories, plural, are likely to have originated from the 17th century golden age of the Dutch East India Company and of Dutch maritime power. This was a big deal. They were a big deal. During like the Baroque period, oh yes, the Dutch were very wealthy because of all of the all of this trade going on, and sailing and what have you. And they were kind of pioneers of that in a way. They were the explorers of their day. They had the money. They had this power. They had this technical skill. They had all of this stuff that equipped them to be, again, very strong and very powerful in that field. And it all had to do with money, like import, export. Again, that's what, allegedly, remember avocado from The Shining. That's allegedly why that beverage exists, because they were trying to replicate the texture of avocados. But of course, you can't grow avocados in the Netherlands. It's just not warm enough. Or citrus fruits, for that matter. So, like, again, I think I explained, like in Baroque, still life paintings, they loved still lifes that were loaded with food. It could be simple food, and it could be very ornate, luxurious food. But if you saw in a still life, especially one of these ornate, luxurious spreads of food, if you saw citrus fruits, if you saw a lemon, that was just yet another symbol of wealth and power financially. Because once again, if you were Dutch at that time in history and you were like sprinkling lemon juice on your food, you were really living quite well. Okay, now, like if you live in the United States, especially if you live in a place like California or Florida, citrus fruits are not a big deal. But at that time, in Northern Europe, they were. And then avocado, this kind of like runny pudding kind of drink. And it gets spilled on Jack. Avocado is a product of, I think, precisely this time period of the Netherlands' history. It's a product of the import-export business and shipping and possibly also colonialism. Again, colonialism, expansion, conquest, exploiting resources, people. Yeah, exploiting people as resources, and doing that all in the name, and cloaking all of that, cloaking all of this greed and madness in the language of faith, Christianity, Protestant Christianity, and that goddamn Protestant work ethic and all the shit. Manifest destiny. Of course, they connected that somehow to, God's will. There's a lot to talk about here, isn't there? But again, today, my video, is concentrating on these episodes of the Twilight Zone. I'm going to put links to all of these Wikipedia pages in the description so you can go find these and watch these on your own. Enjoy it, because the Twilight Zone's an awesome movie. And again, the Apollo 11 mission, the launch date and the landing happened in July of 1969. All right. So you guys tell me what you think is going on. Okay. We have so much more to discuss. There's so much more going on. I've just covered a little bit of it. Yes, I believe that Stanley was very heavily influenced and inspired by Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone. The first episode, the pilot episode, Where Is Everybody? Yeah, I talked about a lot here. I've come to the conclusion in my mind, I've convinced myself that David Bowman is simply unreliable. Really unreliable. Yeah, so there's that. I've talked enough. Let me know what you think. Put it in the comments. I can't wait. I hope you enjoyed the coffee. And the time. Whatever you do when you're listening to me talk. If you're doing chores, if you're working out, that's your business. But I hope you enjoyed it. I'm here to entertain. So everybody, once again, returning viewers, thank you for returning. New viewers, thank you for being new. Subscribers, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate all of you so very, very much. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you know anybody who might be interested in my particular brand of nonsense. And that's that. I'm coming back. I'm not done. I'm not done with 2001. I'm not done with Stanley. Oh no, he's not going to get rid of me. But, but you guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. You know, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. If you need to educate me, inform me, go ahead and do that, but try to be nice about it. If you're an asshole, I'll just block you, and that's that. I'm not going to deal with it anymore. So we have much to discuss. Can't wait for the comments. Can't wait to do my next video. I hope you all have a great weekend. And until next time, until the next video where I find yet another reason to talk at you, I'm gonna go ahead and bid you bye-bye. So, bye-bye, everybody.